Let's work with the second or the other important concept for the cloud. This, which we call it cloud deployment model. We are hearing a lot about these models, which is called the private, public, and community, and finally hybrid. And I am quite sure that you heard about these expressions. Let's have a look in details about these expressions and understand the difference between all of them and when we are able to use any one of them in our organization and which deployment model it will fit our organization. In the public cloud, this it will be available for the public users, all the users. If you have, for example, Zoom, you have Office 365, you have maybe sophisticated CRM solution as Salesforce, or maybe some ERP application as Microsoft. We have their own ERP application. I cannot remember the name right now, but anyway, these services are available for all the users. Then whoever any user want to connect, they will be able to connect. Then this means that this is a public cloud. This means that the infrastructure is shared with all the users, and this normal, and we can understand because we mentioned that the cloud service are shared resources, and we have multi-tenant users or multi-users which they have to access all these services together. Another point which is very important, that the public cloud, it is located on the premises of the cloud provider. When the cloud provider, he is hosting the infrastructure. It may be hosting in one city, 2 cities, 3 cities, whatever. It depends upon the architecture of the cloud service provider. It will be owned by a private company or academic institution or combination. For example, if we are saying Office 365, it's owned by Microsoft. If you are saying Zoom, then it's I don't know the name of the company who manufacturer of Zoom, but anyway, it's owned by Zoom. If we are saying about Salesforce, then this is owned by Salesforce. There are some situations, it may be some academic institution as universities or whatever. Then this it will be, you have a specific entity which is considered as the owner for this service. It's easy setup and expensive for the customer, and of course you can understand this, and as we had some experience with the services, because all what you have to do to use a browser to connect or to have a simple thin client as we are doing with the Zoom. And finally, we have to pay only for the services which we are use. And if you are using a service for 1 year continuous usage, then you have to pay for it. But if you are using it only for 6 months, then you don't need to use it. By the way, just I remember something while we are discussing right now. I don't think that Zoom is considered a cloud service. Do you think why? Just at this point, we are open to discussion. Do you think why? I'm saying that Zoom, it's not considered as a cloud service. Any answer?
No, sir.
Because if you have a subscription with Zoom, you are not paying as you use. I am paying, for example, $17 or $18 per month. And this value is standard, even if I used Zoom or if I did not use it, whatever the number of meetings which I am arranging. Then this means that It's not a cloud service because we cannot classify it as a cloud service because a cloud service, as we mentioned, one of the main characteristics, you have to use as you pay as you use. Then this again, one of the points which you have to take it in your consideration. This is very important. This is the reason why the characteristics of the cloud, it's very important to be understood when you will be able to differentiate between the cloud services, virtualization, and client server services. Okay, the second deployment model, it is the private cloud. And the private cloud, this it will be owned by single entity. It will be owned by a single entity, only one company, and this one company it will have its own private cloud. We don't want to be shared in the public cloud. Why? Usually for security. Usually for security, where data it may be critical. We don't want to be in the shared environment as a public cloud when the data it can be leaked, or it may be a matter of regulation and laws. As you know, for example, in Saudi Arabia, they are saying if you are classified as a government or CNI customer, then you are not allowed to host your data outside Saudi Arabia, and you are not able and you are not allowed to host the data as public cloud. It should be private cloud. Then this means that in a private cloud, that it will be owned by a specific company. This is one company which it owns this service. And usually this entity or the company, it will be operated by the organization, the same organization or a third party. For example, suppose that XYZ company, we have a private cloud when we can, XYZ team, we can run the operation, or we can hire the operation to a third party. We don't have enough competence to run the service, then we can assign this task to another company or third party company, and then we can do the exercise on their behalf. Again, the important point which you have to understand here, that in private cloud, that it can be hosted in the XYZ company premises, or it can be hosted in off-premises. Off-premises, it may be in a cloud service provider. You will say, wow, wait, cloud service provider, you said that here, this is not allowed because it's not secure, it's a public. Yes, you are right, but we can utilize the cloud service provider infrastructure, and we will ask them, we want to have our own private cloud service published in the cloud service provider, by have our own host. If you have your own host, and this host, it has a multiple VMs, and these multiple VMs, they are only assigned for the XYZ company, then this means that it's what we call it private cloud, and this private cloud, it's hosted in a cloud service provider, because as you can see here, all the VMs are assigned to XYZ and in a dedicated host. And of course, if you are saying dedicated host, then this means that it's a physical machine, and this physical machine is dedicated for this company only. The other point, that this, in some situation, it will be nice to have internal billing. What we mean by the internal billing, that the XYZ company, we have maybe 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever number of divisions, and we want to check the cost of each of these divisions together, or maybe other scenario that the XYZ company, it may be a holding company, and this holding company, we have multiple facilities or multiple organizations, and we want to check how much each of these organizations or companies, they are cost them for their IT resources. The third model, it's a community cloud. The community cloud, you can consider the community cloud similar to the private cloud. you can consider it as the private cloud. But the difference between both of them here, that the private cloud, as we mentioned, that it is dedicated for single entity, for a specific customer. But for the community cloud, this it will be shared by some or similar organizations which we have the same interest. Similar organizations which we may have the same interest. For example, universities. We have, for example, in Saudi Arabia, say 15 universities. When these universities, we can work together on a cloud infrastructure, and we will share the data and all this information. It will be shared across all the universities, or maybe group of hospitals, or maybe group of schools, and so on. Then you will find that the community cloud and the private cloud, almost it will be the same, but the private cloud, it will be for a specific entity, and the community cloud, it will be for a group of users. You will find the same concepts as in the private cloud, that this it can be hosted by one of the members of the organizations, one of the universities, or one of the hospitals, or one of the schools. It can be managed and controlled by one of them, and it can be hosted by, again, one of them in their premises, or it can be hosted in a cloud service provider. And again, this cloud service provider, he may be responsible for the management as well. This is acceptable. And as we mentioned here, we need to have it as a physical host, and this physical should be dedicated only for them. Then it will allow only the communication based on their needs and requirements. It can be on or off premises. The last deployment model, it is the hybrid model. And the hybrid model is very easy, because the hybrid model, it will contain two different implementations together from what we explained, maybe public and private. For example, let's say that you have some data which is very critical, and you are not allowed to host this data in a private cloud, but the other data, which is the majority of your data, 70% or maybe 75% of the data, it's not critically classified. Then this means that you can have the your solution as a hybrid cloud, part of it private cloud, where this private cloud, it will contain the data which is the confidential, and this it will be hosted in your premises. Then no one he will have access for it rather than the your team. And the other data which is non-private or data, it will be as a public, and there will be some sort of orchestration between both of them, between the public and the private, to access the resources. These are the deployment models of the cloud services. Any questions?